can explain. I swear I can explain everything. Please just listen to me.
You're under arrest for embezzlement from a financial institution. Stand up slowly. Keep your hands where I can see
No,
it.
no. This is a mistake. I swear to God, I can pay it all back. Just give me time, please. I'll fix this.
Hands behind your back, now.
Please don't do this here. Not in front of everybody. I'm begging you. My mom doesn't even know about any of this. She can't.
The apartment was quiet. 6:50 in the morning. March 18th, 2025. The kind of early hour when Midtown Detroit holds its breath between the last of the night and the first of the day. The kind of hour when most people are still somewhere between a dream and a decision. Two Michigan State Police detectives stood in the corridor of a mid-rise apartment building, badges clipped, warrant folded, weight shifting from heel to toe. They had done this before. They knew how the next few minutes would go. They knocked. The door opened. Stacy Johnson was 21 years old. She was still in pajamas. Her face registered the two men in the hallway the way a person registers a car accident, the split second before impact when the brain hasn't yet told the body what to do. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then something did. She said she could explain everything. The lead detective identified himself. He told her she was under arrest for embezzlement from a financial institution. He told her to turn around and place her hands behind her back. She did not turn around. She swore she could pay it back. She said she just needed more time. She said please, not here, not in front of everyone, not like this. She whispered that her mother didn't even know. The handcuffs clicked anyway. Within 48 hours, Michigan State Police executed a search warrant on that same apartment. What they seized told the whole story without a single word from Stacy Johnson, bank records, deposit slips, and a personal banking statement that laid the architecture of a crime in cold numerical detail. $200,000 stolen from customer accounts. 40 elderly victims. 1 count of embezzlement from a financial institution. A felony carrying a potential 30-year prison sentence. Watch this moment carefully, because what you're witnessing is not the beginning of a story about greed. It is the ending of one about survival that went wrong. Before we go any further, think about this. Every day, you hand your money, your savings, your retirement, your trust, to a stranger behind a counter. You don't know their story. You don't know what they carry home at night. How well do you really know the person handling your money? That question lives in this story. If it unsettles you, leave a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, the fact that you're still watching means you should. Stacy Johnson was born in 2003 in Detroit, Michigan. She was the youngest of 4 children raised in a cramped, run-down house on the city's east side, the kind of house that keeps its problems contained by walls too thin to hold them. Her mother worked exhausting double shifts at a nursing home, leaving before dawn and returning long after dark, her hands carrying the weight of other people's care. Her father had once been a factory worker. Then the factory let him go. Then the drinking started. Then the abuse. He became the loudest presence in a house that had no room for him. Stacy was the invisible one. Not the troubled child, not the rebellious one, not the one who acted out and demanded attention. She was simply the one no one looked at. She wore her siblings' hand-me-down clothes 3 seasons too late. She sat at the edge of family moments and watched them happen to other people. Her father, in front of her siblings, in front of anyone within earshot, called her useless. Called her slow. Told her with the casual cruelty of a man who had long since stopped choosing his words that she would never amount to anything. At school it was no different. Teachers moved through their days without her. Classmates bullied her for her silence, for her stillness, for the particular crime of being too quiet in rooms that rewarded noise. But there was something no one ever saw. Deep inside a girl no one was watching, there was a mind that moved through numbers the way most people move through air, effortlessly, instinctively, without having to think about it. An extraordinary, near-photographic memory for figures and patterns. She never told anyone. She kept it folded away like something too valuable to risk. Because in her experience, the things she had were the things that got taken. So she kept this one hidden. She made herself a promise in that house, in that city, in that life. She would leave. She would build something no one could laugh at. She would never again sit at a table and feel like nothing. She graduated from a local public high school in 2021. She was not the valedictorian. She was not the student most likely to succeed. She was the one who had kept her head down and made it to the other side. College was not an option, the finances simply did not exist. So she took a job as a cashier at a busy gas station on Detroit's east side, earning minimum wage, absorbing daily disrespect from customers who did not see her as a person and from a family that still looked through her like she was made of glass. Her friends moved on. College town apartments, graduation photos, futures assembling themselves in real time. She scanned cigarettes and counted change and smiled at people who would not remember her name by the time they reached their cars. Then, in May of 2023, something changed. She saw a job posting. A teller position at PNC Bank. Starting pay, $18 an hour. Life-changing money for a girl from the East Side. She applied the same day she saw it. 2 weeks later, the call came. Her training lasted 3 weeks at PNC's regional facility, a gleaming corporate campus in Southfield that felt like a different planet from the gas station on the corner. She learned cash handling procedures, transaction verification protocols, fraud detection basics, customer interaction standards. She learned to count bills in front of customers, to spot counterfeits, to smile through difficulty. Her evaluator's notes described someone they had quietly underestimated. Quiet but extremely accurate. Surprisingly fast with systems. Strong attention to detail. Professional demeanor beyond her experience level. On May 22, 2023, Stacy Johnson walked through the doors of PNC Bank branch 4471 on Big Beaver Road in Troy, Michigan, one of the wealthiest suburbs in the state, and reported for her first shift. She had health insurance for the first time in her life. She had a nameplate. She had a drawer full of cash that an institution had trusted her to manage. She had made it. That feeling lasted exactly 9 weeks. Branch 4471 sits in a commercial strip on Big Beaver Road, in a part of Michigan where the median household income exceeds $100,000. The driveways hold BMWs and Lexuses. The lawns are tended by services, not by the people who own them. The branch processes hundreds of thousands of dollars in transactions on any given day, moving money for doctors, lawyers, retirees, and families with decades of carefully accumulated savings. For many customers, especially the older ones, this branch was not just a bank. It was a relationship. They had trusted these counters since before PNC acquired whatever regional institution first opened those doors. They knew the tellers by name. They brought cookies at Christmas. They asked about families. They treated the people behind that marble counter the way they treated their doctors, with the particular intimacy of trust given slowly and expected to last. The branch employed 6 tellers, 2 personal bankers, an assistant manager, and a branch manager. Each teller station was equipped with a computer terminal, a cash drawer, a receipt printer, and a check scanner. Behind a badge-secured door sat the vault room, a floor safe requiring 2 keys to open. Every transaction followed a strict verification protocol. Customer presents identification. Teller confirms account. Amount stated aloud. Withdrawal slip signed. Transaction processed. Cash dispensed. Every step documented. Every step traceable. Every step designed to prevent exactly what was about to happen. But there was a flaw. Tellers held the ability to process transactions without the customer physically present. The capability existed for legitimate administrative purposes, correcting errors, processing adjustments, managing returned items. The system was built on an assumption that the person with the keys would only ever use them as intended. That the record keeper would not also be the thief. That customers, vigilant, engaged, attentive, would catch any unauthorized activity on their statements and report it before damage could accumulate. Every one of those assumptions was about to be proven wrong. Stacy Johnson noticed the vulnerability within her first month on the job. She did not yet act on it. She watched it. She studied it the way her hidden mind had always studied patterns, quietly, methodically, without anyone in the room knowing she was doing it at all. 9 weeks after her first shift, on July 25, 2023, she made a decision. And the 40 people who trusted that counter with their life savings were about to discover, too late, just how invisible a person can be, right up until the moment they are not. The first withdrawal was $800. The account belonged to an 82-year-old widow whose name appeared regularly in the branch's customer records and almost never in person. She came in twice a year, sometimes less. She preferred paper statements, the kind that arrived in a standard white envelope and sat on a kitchen counter for weeks before being opened, if they were opened at all. She had no children nearby. Her balance was substantial enough that $800 would not register as an emergency, not at a glance, not on a tired afternoon, not by a woman who had long since stopped checking figures with the vigilance she once had. Stacy selected her with the same precision she had always applied to numbers. Not guesswork. Calculation. She processed the transaction on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in late July. The branch was thin with customers. Her supervisor had stepped away. The other tellers were absorbed in their own windows. She pulled up the account, initiated the withdrawal, entered the amount, and completed the transaction in the time it took the woman at the end of her line to sign a deposit slip. The system recorded it as a standard customer withdrawal. No alert. No flag. No second look from anyone. At the end of her shift, her drawer balanced to the cent. She drove home and waited. 2 weeks passed. The widow did not call the fraud line. She did not come into the branch with a statement in her hand and a question in her eyes. She did not report anything at all. And in that silence, in the complete and total absence of consequence, Stacy Johnson understood something that would prove more dangerous than the theft itself. She understood that she could do it again. What followed was not recklessness. It was architecture. She built the system the way her mind had always built things, quietly, methodically, invisible to everyone around her. She identified customers by 3 criteria, each one a layer of protection. Age first, she targeted only those in their late 70s to 90s, people whose relationship with their own memory had grown complicated, who sometimes second-guessed their own records. Isolation second, she paid careful attention to who came in alone, who mentioned living by themselves, whose family members were scattered across other states and other lives. Habit third, she watched for the customers who preferred paper statements over online banking, who filed their envelopes without opening them, who moved through the branch on a schedule as predictable as the seasons. She never took more than $2,500 from any single account in any single month. She spread the withdrawals across different victims, never hitting the same account twice in the same week. She kept no written records, she did not need them. The numbers lived inside her the way words live inside a poet, available always, arranged without effort. She tracked every balance, every visitation pattern, every statement cycle from memory, with a precision that no spreadsheet could have replicated and no colleague would ever have suspected. By the end of August, the total was nearly $20,000. By October, it had crossed $60,000. By December, it was moving toward $100,000, and Stacy Johnson's life had begun to change in ways that the branch on Big Beaver Road could not help but notice. She moved out of the cramped East Side apartment she had shared with a cousin and into a sleek one-bedroom in Midtown Detroit, clean lines, high ceilings, a building with a name on the door. She bought a 2023 BMW 3 Series in cash from a dealership in Southfield, signing the paperwork with the composed expression of someone accustomed to transactions of that size. She began wearing designer labels. She had her hair done weekly, her nails maintained on a schedule, her wardrobe assembled with a deliberateness she had once reserved entirely for numbers. The luxury bags she had seen in magazine photographs and store windows during years of passing by without stopping, she carried them now. Her coworkers noticed. Of course they did. But here is what they saw, a quiet, shy girl from Detroit who had apparently found her footing. She offered a casual explanation, a side hustle, items flipped online, and no one pressed her. Because she was still the same soft-spoken, precise, unassuming woman who had always been easy to overlook. The explanation required no scrutiny because she had never been the kind of person who invited it. That invisibility, the same quality that had wounded her for 20 years, had become her most effective instrument. Think about that for a moment. Every week, millions of people walk into a bank, hand over their information, and trust a stranger completely. Not because they have verified that trust. Because the setting demands it. Because the uniform implies it. Because the marble counter and the name plate and the professional smile are enough. Have you ever reviewed your own statements closely enough to catch something off? Would you have trusted someone like Stacy without a second thought? The comment section is open, and the answer might surprise you. There was one thing the investigators would later discover that the security cameras and the transaction logs could not capture on their own. During those same months, while the withdrawals accumulated and the balance in her personal accounts climbed toward figures she had never imagined, Stacy Johnson was quietly directing a portion of the stolen money back into the neighborhood she had left behind. Not to herself. Not to people who knew where it was coming from. To strangers. Struggling single mothers on the east side of Detroit, women whose overdue utility bills and unpaid medical invoices disappeared without explanation, paid in full by someone who left no name. Women who reminded her, in some way she could not have articulated even to herself, of the woman she had watched writing checks at a kitchen table every Sunday night while the refrigerator held nothing but condiments and exhausted hope. Approximately $18,000 moved this way, anonymously, methodically, without recognition. The underdog who no one had ever seen had become, briefly, a guardian to people just like her. The girl who had been called useless was quietly making sure other women did not drown the way her mother nearly had. But the grace in that act could not contain what was growing around it. The more she took, the more the architecture of the scheme demanded. The more accounts she managed, the more precision was required to maintain the silence. The withdrawals accelerated. The amounts climbed. The careful $2,500 ceiling began to feel like a suggestion rather than a rule. She was no longer operating from necessity or even ambition, she was operating from momentum, the particular kind that builds when a person has been moving in one direction for so long that stopping requires more courage than continuing. She did not stop. In late May of 2024, an 83-year-old woman's daughter flew in from Atlanta to help with taxes. She sat down with her mother's paper statements. She was not a banker or an investigator. She was a daughter doing what daughters do, going through the paperwork, organizing the numbers, making sure everything was in order. And in the columns of figures on those printed pages, she found something that did not belong. 11 withdrawals. Amounts ranging from several hundred to over $1,000 each. A total of $9,400 and change. Transactions her mother had never made, could not account for, had no memory of authorizing. She called PNC's fraud line the same afternoon. The silence that had protected Stacy Johnson for nearly a year was over. It had ended not with a sweep or a surveillance breakthrough or a tip from inside the branch. It had ended with a daughter, a stack of paper statements, and the simple act of paying attention. PNC's internal fraud team moved with the speed of an institution that understood exactly what was at stake. Within days of the complaint, investigators had pulled the transaction records for every withdrawal flagged by the daughter in Atlanta. Each one traced back to a single point of origin, Stacy Johnson's teller station at branch 4471. Not similar stations. Not a rotation of employees across shared shifts. One station. One operator. One set of login credentials, time-stamped, documented, and entered into the bank system with the same clean accuracy that had earned her strong evaluations 3 weeks into training. They expanded the search. What the records revealed was not the work of impulse. It was the work of a mind that had been solving problems in numerical silence for its entire life, now applied to the wrong problem entirely. 40 separate accounts. 40 separate victims, most of them elderly, most of them living alone, most of them the precise kind of customer who trusted the institution enough to stop verifying it. The withdrawals were distributed with a discipline that would have been almost admirable in a different context, spread across time, across accounts, never concentrated enough in any single month to trigger an automatic alert, never large enough in any single transaction to require a supervisor's approval. The architecture held together perfectly, right up until the moment someone looked at it. When the investigators pulled Stacy Johnson's personal banking records, the picture became definitive. Her reported annual income was $37,000. The deposits in her accounts over the previous 11 months totaled more than $210,000. Cash deposits, made regularly, in amounts that aligned with the stolen withdrawals almost to the dollar. There was no inheritance. There was no windfall. There was no side hustle that produced numbers like these. On June 12, 2024, Stacy Johnson was called into the branch manager's office. She was escorted out of the building the same day, quietly, without spectacle, past the marble counter and the teller stations and the customers she had greeted by name, customers who looked up and watched her leave without fully understanding what they were witnessing. Her access was revoked before she reached the parking lot. The nameplate came down. The drawer was reassigned. She had been employed at PNC Bank for just over a year. The case moved from the bank's internal team to Michigan State Police, where detectives assembled the full evidentiary record over the months that followed: bank records, transaction logs, deposit histories, the personal banking statement that turned a pattern into proof. The warrant was prepared. The date was set. March 18, 2025. The two detectives who knocked on her door at 6:50 that morning arrived with everything they needed and nothing left to confirm. They had done the work quietly, methodically, the way the law tends to move when it is not performing for anyone, building the case brick by brick, statement by statement, until the structure was solid enough to hold. Stacy opened the door in pajamas. She had not heard them coming. She could not have, not because the investigation had been careless, but because it had been precise, the same quality she had prided herself on, applied now from the other direction. Her face registered the moment the way a structure registers the moment before it gives, the instant of total stillness before everything shifts. She tried to explain. She swore she could pay it back. She asked them not to do it here, not like this, not in front of everyone, her voice dropping into the particular register of a person who understands, at last and too late, that the thing they were afraid of has already arrived. The handcuffs closed. The detectives led her out of the apartment she had leased with stolen money, past the parking space where the BMW sat, down through the lobby of the building whose address she had once considered proof that she had escaped. She was 21 years old. Stacy Johnson now faces up to 30 years in federal prison on a single count of embezzlement from a financial institution, with additional penalties still being evaluated. The restitution process has begun, but the math of restoration is not the same as the math of harm. Money can be repaid on paper. What was taken from 40 elderly people, the trust, the security, the quiet certainty that the institution holding their life savings was protecting it, cannot be itemized on a restitution form. Some of those 40 victims have already died. They passed away without knowing what had been taken from them, without an apology, without a resolution. Others are still waiting. They built their balances over 40 and 50 years, pension checks deposited monthly, savings set aside through decades of careful, grinding discipline, and they watched those balances shrink in ways they attributed to their own failing memories rather than to the quiet, precise young woman who smiled at them from behind the counter. Consider what was assembled on Stacy Johnson's side of the ledger. A mind of genuine, extraordinary capability, the kind of numerical memory that institutions spend years trying to recruit and develop. A work ethic sharpened by years of being dismissed. A hunger for legitimacy that drove her to apply, to train, to earn strong evaluations in a branch that had no reason to take a second look at a soft-spoken girl from the east side of Detroit. She had every tool. She had the job, the access, the trust, and a hidden gift that most people go entire careers without developing. She had found her power. And she spent it in the worst possible direction, not because she lacked the intelligence to know better, but because the distance between knowing and choosing is where character lives, and in that distance, something failed. The scheme did not end because of a surveillance breakthrough or an internal tip or a sophisticated fraud algorithm. It ended because a daughter flew home from Atlanta to help her elderly mother with taxes. It ended because of paper statements and a kitchen table and the elementary act of reading closely what is plainly written in front of you. That is how it almost always ends. Not in dramatic raids or clever traps. In the ordinary, unhurried persistence of people paying attention. The branch on Big Beaver Road is still there. The marble counter is still there. The nameplate slots are still there. The customers, the ones who trusted the institution enough to stop verifying it, still come in on their regular schedules, still make small talk, still bring cookies at Christmas. They just don't know who to trust anymore. And that, more than the money, more than the sentence, more than the arrest footage or the court records or the search warrant executed on a March morning in Midtown, that quiet erosion of ordinary faith, is perhaps the truest measure of what Stacey Johnson threw away. $200,000 at a time.
If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with someone who would appreciate it, and let's keep building this community together. And before you go, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what stood out to you the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next.